911? There's illegal activity, loud noise, and possible weapons in this garage. Send officers now!
Dolores, our HOA president, marched straight into my open garage, phone in hand, screaming at the dispatcher while staring me down. It was just me, a retired Navy veteran, and 4 old military buddies on a quiet Saturday. We were restoring a '69 Harley, sipping cold beers, classic rock playing low. No complaints from anyone else, just guys working with our hands, like always. But Dolores got right in my face.
This ends today. You're destroying property values with this. This filth.
Pure lies about noise, weapons, illegal business. She wanted me humiliated, fined, forced out. She smirked as sirens approached, confident she'd won. Then the officers pulled up, stepped out, and the look on Dolores's face when they walked straight to me, smiling. You'll have to hear what happened next. Worst HOA power trip you've dealt with? Comment below. Best ones get pinned. 3 months earlier, I thought buying 412 Maple Street was the smartest move I'd ever made. Wrong. Dead wrong. I'm Nathaniel Thompson, 52, retired Navy machinist who spent 25 years fixing nuclear submarines. After 2 decades underwater, I figured restoring vintage motorcycles in my own garage would be the peaceful retirement I'd earned. The house was perfect. End unit in Willowbrook Estates, extra wide driveway, 2-car garage that screamed workshop paradise. Even checked with the HOA before signing. Home workshops explicitly allowed in the CC&Rs. What could go wrong? The satisfying ping of cooling metal after a long work session, the texture of worn leather on my tool roll, the smell of motor oil mixing with crisp autumn air. That was supposed to be my new therapy. Enter Dolores Weatherby. Picture your worst nightmare neighbor, then multiply by 10. This woman ironed her jeans, vacuumed her garage floor daily, and drove a white Lexus SUV so spotless you could perform surgery on the hood. 6-year HOA president because nobody else wanted to deal with her control freak tendencies. Our first meeting? 3 days after moving in. I'm unloading my tool chest when she materializes like some suburban dictator, clipboard ready for battle. The sharp click of her designer heels on concrete announced her arrival like a death march. What exactly do you plan to do with all that equipment? She said equipment like I was importing nuclear waste. Motorcycle restoration, classic bikes. It's therapeutic after 25 years fixing submarines. Her face twisted like I'd admitted to running a meth lab. Section 12.4 of our CC&Rs clearly states regulations regarding commercial activities. We maintain very high standards here. Commercial? I was restoring my dad's 1969 Harley Sportster. Ma'am, I checked the rules. Home workshops are legal as long as they're hobbies, not businesses. She sniffed. Actually sniffed. Like my garage offended her delicate sensibilities. We'll see about that, Mr. Thompson. The way she said my name felt like a threat. First Saturday with the guys should have been perfect. Bob the electrician, Jim the plumber, Carlos who ran heavy equipment, my military crew who'd been helping each other with projects for years, plus my buddy Rodriguez from the police force who loved vintage bikes almost as much as I did. Classic rock at neighbor-friendly volume, cold beers, garage door open. American men doing what we do best, fixing things with our hands. 3:47 p.m. I'll never forget the time. Dolores appeared with a measuring tape and professional sound meter like some demented building inspector. Gentlemen, I'm documenting multiple CC&R violations. Unauthorized commercial vehicle repair, excessive noise, possible zoning infractions. Carlos set down his wrench. Lady, we're helping Nathaniel fix his dead father's motorcycle. I've been watching for weeks. She photographed my workbench like it was evidence at a murder trial. Multiple vehicles, regular customers, monetary transactions, commercial signage. She pointed at a vintage Harley poster hanging inside my garage. These are friends, I said through gritted teeth. Nobody pays anything except pizza money. Her smile could have frozen hellfire. The HOA board will determine the facts. Expect official documentation. Monday brought the declaration of war, certified letter, $200 fine for commercial vehicle repair operations. Remove all business signage within 10 days or face daily $50 penalties. I appealed immediately. Photos of identical garage setups throughout the neighborhood. Original purchase documents showing pre-approved workshop status. Character references from my restoration group. The hearing was canceled day of via email. Scheduling conflict. I spotted her white Lexus at the country club that same afternoon. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about property values or neighborhood standards. Dolores Weatherby had declared personal war on me. She wanted me gone, completely, and she'd use every dirty trick in the HOA playbook to make it happen. What I didn't know was how far she'd go. The private investigators, the false complaints, the insurance fraud. And that final Saturday, when she'd march into my garage, phone in hand, ready to destroy my life with one 911 call, not knowing that one of my dangerous criminals wore a badge to work every day. Some battles you can't avoid. You can only win them. Dolores wasn't just filing complaints. She was building a case like some demented prosecutor. 2 weeks after that canceled hearing, I got home from the grocery store to find her crouched behind my neighbor's bushes with a telephoto lens, photographing my garage like she was documenting a crime scene. The smell of her expensive perfume mixed with crushed azalea leaves gave her away before I even spotted the camera. "Afternoon, Dolores. Getting into nature photography?" She jumped up, camera strap tangled in the branches. "I'm conducting a routine property inspection for HOA compliance purposes." "From Mrs. Brianna's azaleas?" Her face flushed red, but she doubled down. "Your Saturday gatherings violate multiple ordinances. I have photographic evidence of commercial vehicle traffic patterns." Commercial vehicle traffic. My buddies drove a Ford pickup, a Chevy sedan, and Rodriguez's personal motorcycle. Real threatening stuff. That night, I found copies of Dolores's evidence folder slipped under 3 neighbors' doors, professional quality photos of my garage during our weekend sessions, with handwritten notes, excessive noise, 11:30 a.m., possible monetary exchange, 2:15 p.m., unknown chemicals stored unsafely. The unknown chemicals? WD-40 and Coca-Cola. But here's where Dolores made her first real mistake. She decided to go nuclear with official complaints. Filed formal violations with the city planning office claiming I was running an unlicensed motorcycle repair business. Alleged I was advertising services online and accepting payment from customers. Pure fiction. But she figured city officials would rubber stamp anything an HOA president submitted. Problem was, I'd learned a few things about documentation during my Navy years. 25 years of military paperwork teaches you that everything leaves a trail if you know where to look. I spent my lunch break at the planning office filing a Freedom of Information Act request for all complaints filed by Willowbrook residents in the past year. Cost me $43 and a 2-hour wait in a plastic chair that squeaked every time I moved. But what I discovered was gold. Dolores had filed complaints about 7 different residents. 7. All targeting the same type of people. Single men, blue-collar workers, modest incomes. A Latino landscaper who worked from home. A black single mother who ran a small catering business. An elderly widower who restored antique furniture in his basement. Every complaint contained the same phrases. Declining property values, inappropriate commercial activity, neighborhood character concerns. I remembered reading about discrimination cases in the military. Patterns like this weren't just coincidence, they were evidence. Document everything because systematic harassment based on demographics could be prosecuted under federal fair housing laws. I made copies of everything, then paid another visit to Mrs. Brianna, the retired teacher who'd brought me cookies during my first Dolores encounter. "Mrs. Brianna, I'm curious about something. Has Dolores ever complained about other neighbors?" Her eyes narrowed. The taste of her green tea was bitter, matching her expression. That woman. She invited me in for tea, and the stories started flowing. Turns out Dolores had a history. She'd targeted the previous owner of my house, a divorced electrician who also used his garage for work. Filed so many complaints, the guy eventually sold and moved to another state. Same pattern with 2 other families who'd lived here before I arrived. She thinks working men are... Mrs. Brianna struggled for the polite word. Beneath the neighborhood standards. She wants only office workers and retirees here. The pieces clicked together like a socket wrench finding the right bolt. This wasn't about noise or property values. This was about class warfare. Mrs. Brianna leaned forward conspiratorially. "But Nathaniel, you should know something else. Dolores has been asking strange questions about your friends, specifically about the one who rides the motorcycle." My blood chilled. "What kind of questions?" "Whether he's married, what he does for work, if he has a criminal background. She seems very interested in that particular friend." Rodriguez. She was targeting Rodriguez. That evening, I called my police buddy to give him a heads up. The sound of his laughter over the phone should have been reassuring, but something felt off. Marcus, don't worry about me, Rodriguez said. But you should know, we've been getting some interesting calls at the station. Anonymous tips about suspicious activity at your address, claims of loud parties, possible drug activity, groups of men gathering regularly. She's calling in false reports? Can't prove it's her, but the timing matches your Saturday sessions perfectly. Good thing the desk sergeant knows me personally, or you might have had some awkward visits. This was escalating beyond neighborhood disputes. Dolores was trying to weaponize law enforcement against us, but she made one crucial error in her surveillance obsession. The next Saturday, while photographing us from across the street, she stepped into Mrs. Brianna's flower garden to get better angle, left clear footprints in the freshly watered soil, and snapped several branches on prize-winning roses. The crunch of broken stems under her designer heels was audible from my garage. Mrs. Brianna was not pleased. That woman destroyed my garden to spy on you. This has gone too far. And Mrs. Brianna did something Dolores never expected, something that would shift the entire neighborhood dynamic. She called a neighborhood meeting, not an official HOA meeting controlled by Dolores. An old-fashioned coffee klatch in her living room, inviting everyone who'd been targeted or bothered by our HOA president's behavior. 12 neighbors showed up. 12 people with stories about Dolores's harassment, discrimination, and abuse of power. That's when I realized something that would change everything. I wasn't fighting this battle alone anymore. Mrs. Brianna's living room felt like a war room that Tuesday evening. 12 neighbors sat in a circle, coffee cups trembling as people shared horror stories I'd never imagined. The smell of jasmine tea mixed with nervous sweat and growing fury. Janet, the retired teacher, spoke first. Dolores tried to evict my divorced son for letting his kids play basketball. Basketball! She filed noise complaints claiming it was disruptive commercial activity. Bob the electrician's hands clenched his coffee mug. She reported my work van as an illegal commercial vehicle. I've parked that van in my driveway for 8 years. Story after story. Pattern harassment. Systematic targeting of anyone who didn't fit Dolores's suburban fantasy. But Tom, the elderly widower, dropped the bomb. She got me kicked off the HOA board last year when I questioned the management company's billing. Suddenly, I was unfit for fiduciary responsibility after 5 years as treasurer. Management company billing. My blood pressure spiked. What kind of billing issues? Phantom inspections, double-charged maintenance. Monthly fees jumped 40% when she hired her nephew's company. Her nephew's company. I'd just found the smoking gun. After everyone left, I cornered Tom by his car. October air bit sharp, carrying the scent of burning leaves and opportunity. Tom, you still have those financial records? Everything. 23 boxes. I'm a retired accountant. I keep copies of everything that smells fishy. Next morning, I burned a personal day in Tom's basement, analyzing HOA records with military precision. What I found was corruption so blatant it was almost insulting. Willowbrook Management Solutions, Derek Weatherby, Dolores's nephew, had been systematically looting the HOA for 2 years. Phantom inspections at $150 each. Emergency repairs that never happened. Management fees tripled overnight when Derek took over. Total theft, $47,000. But the real gold was in Derek's email printouts. Direct communication with Aunt Dolores about enforcement targeting and demographic compliance management. Actual quote, focus violations on blue-collar residents to encourage voluntary relocation and improve community standards. This wasn't just fraud, it was conspiracy with civil rights violations. I photocopied everything, then called Rodriguez. You need to see this, now. He came over that Saturday, ostensibly for motorcycle work, but really for evidence review. When he saw the financial records, his cop instincts kicked in hard. Marcus, this is federal territory. Mail fraud, wire fraud, civil rights violations under color of authority. The FBI dreams about cases this clean. Can we prove Dolores is getting kickbacks? Rodriguez's smile was predatory. My buddy in white-collar crime is gonna love this, but we need her to make the next move. She didn't disappoint. That week brought 3 new violation notices. My garage door being open during daylight was unsightly storage display. My blue motorcycle cover violated earth tone aesthetic requirements. My garden hose hanging on the house was improper equipment storage. $200 per violation. $600 total. But Thursday evening, Dolores played her masterpiece. I was alone in the garage when I heard voices outside. Multiple people. Dolores was conducting some kind of tour. Primary source of our neighborhood's declining standards. Multiple violations, possible illegal operations, complete disregard for community aesthetics. Through the garage window, I watched Dolores leading 3 people in business suits around my property like tour guides at a disaster site. Property values have dropped 12% since this situation began, she announced confidently. Pure fiction. But her audience was taking detailed notes. After they left, I called my realtor buddy Mike. Mike, what are Willowbrook property values doing? Up 6% this year. Hot market? Why? Just checking reality against someone's fantasy. Friday morning brought the legal threat. Certified letter from Dolores's attorney demanding immediate cessation of commercial activities and threatening lawsuit for property value diminishment and community disruption. The letter mentioned concerned community stakeholders prepared for civil litigation. Those business suits weren't random visitors. They were fake property assessors building a fraudulent legal case. I speed-dialed Rodriguez. She's manufacturing evidence with fake appraisers. This isn't harassment anymore, it's orchestrated fraud. Marcus, time to set the trap. What kind of trap? The kind where we let her think she's winning until she hangs herself with her own rope. You free Saturday morning? The metallic taste of impending justice filled my mouth like chrome polish on a perfect restoration job. What do you need me to do? Just keep doing exactly what you're doing. Work on motorcycles, have the guys over, act completely normal. And you? Rodriguez's laugh was dark as motor oil. I'm going to make some calls. Federal calls. Because Saturday's going to be very educational for our friend Dolores. She has no idea what's coming, does she? None whatsoever. And that's exactly how we want it. Saturday morning arrived with the crisp bite of late October air and the promise of justice. Rodriguez had been cryptic about his federal calls, but I trusted military planning when I saw it. Sometimes the best strategy is letting your enemy think they're winning right up until they destroy themselves. I started my normal routine. Coffee, classic rock, garage door open. The familiar smell of motor oil and metal polish mixed with autumn leaves. Just another peaceful Saturday in suburbia. Except Dolores was already positioned across the street at 8:47 a.m., phone ready, watching my every move like a suburban sniper. At 9:15, Bob arrived with his toolbox. At 9:30, Carlos pulled up in his pickup. By 10 a.m., we had 4 guys working on the Harley, exactly like every other Saturday for the past 3 months. But today felt different. Electric. Like the calm before a storm that's been building for weeks. Dolores was taking photos constantly now, practically vibrating with anticipation. She'd positioned herself in Mrs. Brianna's front yard, uninvited, with what looked like professional surveillance equipment. Man, that woman's lost her mind, Carlos muttered, installing new brake pads. She's been photographing us for 20 minutes straight. Let her, I said, adjusting the carburetor. Sometimes you have to give people enough rope. At 10:23, Rodriguez arrived on his vintage Kawasaki. Nothing unusual. He came most Saturdays to help with the Harley restoration, but today he had a small duffel bag strapped to his bike. Morning, gentlemen, he said, pulling off his helmet. Beautiful day for motorcycle work. Dolores practically bounced with excitement. Her dangerous biker gang was assembling right on schedule. What she didn't know was that Rodriguez's duffel bag contained body cameras, recording equipment, and paperwork that would change everything. At exactly 10:45, Dolores made her move. She marched across the street, phone already dialing, face flushed with righteous fury. But instead of staying on the sidewalk like previous confrontations, she walked straight into my garage. 911, I need immediate police response. There's illegal business activity, excessive noise, and I think these men have weapons. She was standing 3 feet from my workbench, screaming into her phone, while staring directly at Rodriguez, who was calmly cleaning a wrench with a shop rag. Ma'am, I need you to step out of my garage, I said firmly. Don't you dare tell me what to do. I'm documenting criminal activity for law enforcement. Rodriguez looked up from his wrench. Criminal activity? You people think you can terrorize this neighborhood with your noise and your criminal behavior. Well, I have news for you. I know people in this town. Important people. And this ends today. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a socket wrench. Carlos set down his tools. Lady, we're fixing a motorcycle. What's criminal about that? Illegal business operations, unlicensed vehicle repair, disturbing the peace. The police are already on their way to arrest all of you." Rodriguez stood up slowly, still holding the wrench. "The police are coming to arrest us?" "That's right. And when they see what you're really doing here, you'll all be in handcuffs where you belong." She was so focused on her dramatic performance, she didn't notice Rodriguez pulling something from his back pocket. "Ma'am, I have a question for you. I don't answer to criminals." "Do you know what this is?" Rodriguez held up a small leather wallet. Dolores squinted at it. "I don't care what that is. The police will be here any minute." Rodriguez flipped open the wallet, revealing a gold badge and official identification. "This is a police badge, specifically Chief of Police Rodriguez's badge, and you're right, the police are already here." The color drained from Dolores's face like oil from a cracked pan. That can't be real. You're just some criminal biker." "Ma'am, I've been coming here every Saturday for 3 months to help my friend Nathaniel restore his father's motorcycle. And you just filed a false police report claiming I'm a dangerous criminal." Dolores started backing toward the garage entrance, her phone call forgotten. "This is impossible. You can't be—" "I did my research." "What research? Following me? Taking photos? Because I've been documenting your harassment campaign for weeks." The sound of sirens grew closer. Real ones this time, not from Dolores's 911 call. "You see, Mrs. Weatherby, while you were busy playing neighborhood dictator, I was working with federal investigators on a little matter involving HOA financial fraud and civil rights violations." 3 police cruisers pulled into my driveway, followed by 2 unmarked federal vehicles. Dolores's phone slipped from her trembling hands, clattering on the concrete floor. "Ma'am," Rodriguez continued in his official police voice, "you're under arrest for filing false police reports, criminal harassment, and conspiracy to commit fraud." The handcuffs clicked with the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard, but the real show was just beginning. The garage went dead silent except for Dolores sobbing in the police car outside. Agent Sarah Martinez from the FBI stepped forward, her face grim as death. "Mr. Thompson, what I'm about to tell you is going to make you very angry." She pulled out a thick manila folder, hands shaking slightly. "We've been tracking your neighbor for 6 months. This isn't about property values or noise complaints." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Dolores Weatherby and her nephew Derek have been running a systematic fraud operation across 12 HOAs. They target working-class residents, harass them into selling, then split profits with real estate investors." Rodriguez's jaw clenched. "How much money are we talking about?" $340,000 in fraudulent HOA billing alone. But the property manipulation scheme, that's worth millions. Agent Martinez spread photos across my workbench, not of motorcycles, but of bank records and email printouts. "This email is from Dolores to Derek, dated 3 weeks ago." She read aloud. "The motorcycle target is weakening. If we escalate to criminal complaints, I estimate forced sale within 60 days. Projected profit, $73,000 split." The taste in my mouth went metallic, like blood. 73,000? Your house, Nathaniel. They plan to force you to sell below market value, then flip it to their investor friends. Dolores gets 15 grand finder's fee. Derek handles the fraudulent HOA documentation. Bob slammed his wrench down. They were going to steal his house? Already did it to 11 other families. Single mothers, elderly widowers, disabled veterans, anyone who couldn't fight back effectively. The garage spun around me. 3 months of harassment, violation notices, sleepless nights. All so Dolores could make a quick 15 grand. "But here's what she didn't know," Rodriguez said, his cop voice taking over. "Tom's been feeding information to the FBI since March." "Tom?" Agent Martinez nodded. "Retired accountant notices obvious billing fraud, contacts federal authorities. We've been building this case for months, waiting for enough evidence to prosecute the whole conspiracy." She pulled out another document. "This morning's arrest warrant covered Derek's office, Dolores's house, and the investment company bank accounts, computer records, communication logs, financial statements, everything." "The real beauty?" Rodriguez grinned. "Every false police report she filed is recorded in our system. Timestamps, audio, response logs. Perfect documentation of systematic harassment." My hands were shaking now. "How many families did they destroy?" 15 confirmed forced sales. Average loss per family, $47,000. Total theft including HOA fraud, over $2 million. Agent Martinez's voice softened. Marcus, you weren't just defending your garage workshop. You were the key to stopping a criminal enterprise that was destroying working families across 3 counties. The irony hit like a sledgehammer. Dolores spent months calling me a criminal while running an actual criminal conspiracy. What happens now? Derek's looking at 15 to 20 years federal prison. Dolores faces felony fraud, civil rights violations, and enough false police report charges to keep her locked up until she's 80. Through the garage window, I watched Dolores being loaded into a federal transport vehicle, still screaming about her rights and demanding lawyers. The HOA gets court-appointed management, all fraudulent fines are voided, and there's going to be a substantial victim compensation fund. Rodriguez patted my shoulder. Your Saturday motorcycle sessions just took down a multi-million-dollar fraud ring. The smell of motor oil mixed with autumn air suddenly smelled like freedom. Dolores had tried to destroy my life for $15,000. Instead, she'd destroyed her own for nothing. Some people play stupid games and win stupid prizes. Others just get exactly what they deserve. We need her to hang herself with her own rope. Agent Martinez spread surveillance photos across my workbench Sunday evening, the smell of fresh coffee mixing with motor oil as we planned Dolores's downfall. She makes bail tomorrow morning, and narcissists like your HOA president can't resist having the last word. Rodriguez cracked his knuckles. Women like Dolores don't accept defeat. She'll be back here within 48 hours, guaranteed. The plan forming in my garage was beautiful in its simplicity. Let Dolores think she could still win. Here's her psychology profile, Martinez explained, tapping a thick FBI folder. Control obsessed, never admits fault, pathological need to be the smartest person in the room. When everything collapses, they always try one final manipulation. My garage was about to become the ultimate trap. The technical setup felt like something from a spy thriller. Martinez pulled devices from her briefcase that were smaller than matchboxes but could record conversations from 50 yards away. This goes in your toolbox, she demonstrated, showing me a transmitter disguised as a socket wrench. Voice activated, 36-hour battery, federal court admissible. When she shows up making threats, we'll capture every syllable. Rodriguez added the legal framework with cop-level precision. Virginia law allows recording on your own property. She has zero expectation of privacy walking into your garage uninvited. But the psychological trap was pure genius. We're going to let Derek think his aunt is cooperating, Martinez explained with a predator's smile. Prison calls are monitored. She'll overhear a conversation suggesting Dolores is making a deal to save herself. Won't that make her run? Opposite. She'll come here desperate to control the narrative, convince you to support her version of events, using her own personality flaws as weapons against her. The technical education was incredible. Martinez taught me about voice isolation software, motion-activated cameras, legal requirements for admissible evidence. 25 years in the Navy hadn't prepared me for modern surveillance technology. This motion sensor activates when anyone approaches within 20 feet, she explained, positioning a device that looked exactly like a standard automotive gauge. Backup power supply hidden in your air compressor housing. Even if she cuts main power, everything keeps recording. Rodriguez handled the street-level strategy. She'll bring backup. Lawyer, investment partners, maybe hired muscle. They'll try offering you money to forget what you witnessed. Bribery? Recorded bribery attempts. Federal conspiracy charges, witness tampering, obstruction of justice. We're talking 25 years minimum when you try corrupting federal witnesses. The garage transformation was subtle but complete. Every tool repositioned for optimal audio capture. Cameras disguised as work lights. Recording equipment hidden inside motorcycle parts boxes. To any casual observer, it looked exactly the same. Just a veteran's workshop with classic bikes and vintage tools. But now every conversation would be monitored by federal investigators building a case worth millions. Remember Nathaniel, Martinez emphasized, her voice carrying 20 years of federal law enforcement experience. Don't try being clever. Act natural. Let her talk. Narcissists love explaining how they outsmarted everyone. The psychology was fascinating. Criminals almost always return to scenes where they felt powerful, especially when their world crumbles. Dolores had spent months treating my garage like conquered territory. Now desperation would drive her back. Rodriguez coordinated backup procedures. My officers stay invisible unless you signal distress. This operation depends on her feeling safe enough to incriminate herself. Sunday night, I tested every system. The recording equipment was so sensitive it picked up my heartbeat when I leaned close to the microphones. Motion sensors tracked movement with military precision. Backup batteries could power everything for 72 hours. "She'll come Tuesday latest," Martinez predicted, packing her equipment. "Bail conditions require check-ins with pretrial services. She'll be humiliated, desperate, needing to control something after federal custody stripped away her power." The taste of approaching victory was metallic, like chrome polish on a perfectly restored motorcycle part. Rodriguez shook my hand. "Marcus, 3 months ago you were an HOA harassment victim. Tomorrow you'll be a federal informant bringing down a criminal conspiracy." The irony was exquisite. For months, Dolores had surveilled my garage, documented my activities, built evidence files trying to destroy me. Now I was doing exactly the same thing to her. The difference? My evidence was real. When she walked back into my garage, which every federal behavioral expert guaranteed she would, every threat, every bribery attempt, every desperate lie would be recorded for prosecutors who specialized in putting criminals away forever. Tuesday morning, I went through my normal routine. Coffee, classic rock, garage door open, working on the Harley like nothing had changed. Except everything had changed. And Dolores was about to learn that some battles you can't win, no matter how desperate you get. The chrome on my Harley had never looked so perfect. Tuesday morning tasted like lightning, sharp, electric, dangerous. I was fine-tuning the Harley's carburetor when my phone buzzed. She made bail, driving rental white sedan, Derek with her, both desperate, stay sharp. Rodriguez. The FBI surveillance van lurked 3 blocks away, disguised as a cable repair truck. Agent Martinez was positioned in Mrs. Brianna's guest bedroom, watching my garage through high-powered optics. Half the federal law enforcement in Virginia was focused on Willowbrook Estates. At 10:23 a.m., the white sedan appeared like a predator stalking prey. Derek Weatherby stepped out first, looking like federal custody had aged him 20 years. Hollow cheeks, cheap suit, hands trembling as he fumbled with cigarettes. This wasn't the confident management company owner who'd been systematically looting HOAs. This was a broken man clinging to his last desperate play. Dolores emerged from the driver's side wearing designer sunglasses and an expression that could have cut diamonds. Even from 50 feet away, I could see the fury radiating off her like heat from asphalt. They approached my driveway like generals planning a suicide mission. "Mr. Thompson!" Derek's voice cracked like a teenager's. "We need to discuss this situation. There's been a terrible misunderstanding." I kept working, letting the hidden recording equipment drink in every syllable. The carburetor adjustment could wait. This conversation was going to destroy them both. What kind of misunderstanding involves $340,000 in fraud? Dolores shoved past Derek, marching into my garage like she still owned the neighborhood. The motion sensors activated silently, transmitting her confession in real time to federal prosecutors. The kind where community leaders get railroaded by prosecutors who don't understand property management, she snarled. Derek followed reluctantly, sweat staining his shirt despite the cool October air. "Marcus, I know things got heated, but this federal investigation is destroying innocent families." I set down my wrench, wiping grease-stained hands on a shop rag. "Innocent families? We're community managers, not criminals," Dolores exploded, pacing around my workbench like a caged predator. Every fee, every inspection, every enforcement action was completely legal under HOA statutes. Derek shot her a desperate warning look, but Dolores was beyond rational thought. "You have no idea what you've unleashed. Federal agents treating community volunteers like organized crime bosses. It's completely insane." "So, those phantom inspections Tom documented were legitimate?" "Phantom inspections?" Dolores's laugh was bitter as burnt motor oil. "That senile fool doesn't understand modern community management. Complex fee structures, compliance monitoring, demographic optimization. These require sophisticated systems." Derek was practically vibrating with panic. "Dolores, maybe we shouldn't discuss specifics. Demographic optimization? Quality control, Nathaniel." Her voice carried the cold certainty of someone who'd never questioned her own righteousness. "Some residents enhance community standards, others destroy them. Effective management means encouraging improvement through targeted compliance." She was confessing to federal civil rights violations while FBI equipment recorded every word. Derek tried damage control. "What my aunt means is that all residents receive equal treatment under established community guidelines." Equal treatment? Dolores whirled on him like a striking snake. You think I spent 6 years building property values just to watch them destroyed by people who think garages are workshops? The mask wasn't just slipping, it was shattered completely. Dolores, please stop. No, Derek, I'm finished pretending this wasn't necessary. We identified 17 properties occupied by undesirable demographics. 17 families dragging down everyone else's investment. The taste of victory was metallic on my tongue, like perfectly polished chrome. What makes someone undesirable? Derek looked ready to run, but Dolores was in full confession mode, her narcissism demanding she prove how clever she'd been. Single mothers with multiple children creating noise. Elderly people who can't maintain properties properly. Blue-collar workers who use garages for this filth. She gestured at my restoration setup like it was a disease. And your solution was harassment until people moved? Targeted enforcement until voluntary relocation occurred. Standard property management technique used nationwide. Including filing false police reports? Derek physically recoiled, but Dolores doubled down with suicidal confidence. I filed legitimate safety complaints about suspicious activities. Groups of men gathering regularly, possible substance use, potential weapons storage. Any responsible HOA president would contact authorities about criminal behavior. She'd just confessed to filing false police reports while federal recording equipment captured every damning syllable. The truth is, Nathaniel, this neighborhood was experiencing problematic demographic shifts, property values declining, community standards deteriorating. Someone had to take decisive action. Derek grabbed her arm desperately. Dolores, stop talking, right now. But she shook him off, rage and arrogance overriding survival instincts completely. You want the real truth? We identified your property as high-priority acquisition, prime location, below-market purchase potential, significant improvement opportunity after demographic correction. The garage went silent except for the distant hum of recording equipment documenting her complete destruction. Derek's face was white as fresh primer. Jesus Christ, Dolores. What have you done? Derek's horror at his aunt's confession lasted exactly 3 seconds before pure survival instinct kicked in. Marcus, listen to me carefully, he said, pulling out his phone and showing me a banking app. I can transfer $50,000 to your account right now, today, just a gesture of goodwill to resolve this misunderstanding. The smell of desperation mixed with motor oil as he stepped closer to my workbench. 50,000 to forget whatever you think you heard. Another 50 when the federal investigation concludes with no charges against my aunt. Dolores smiled like a shark scenting blood. Derek's right. You're a working man, Nathaniel. $100,000 would solve a lot of problems. I could practically hear Agent Martinez taking notes from across the street as they dug their graves deeper. You're offering me money to lie to federal investigators? We're offering compensation for the stress our family dispute has caused you, Derek said smoothly, apparently having found his lawyer voice. Nothing more, nothing less. Dolores wasn't content with simple bribery. Her narcissism demanded she explain exactly how brilliant their scheme had been. Marcus, you have to understand. What we did here was genius. Pure business optimization applied to residential property management. Derek shot her another warning look, but she was beyond caring about consequences. 17 targeted properties across Willowbrook. Average purchase price reduction, $47,000 per unit. Resale to appropriate demographics at market value within 6 months. Total profit per cycle, approximately $68,000. She was confessing to a multi-million-dollar conspiracy while trying to bribe a federal witness. The beauty was the systematic approach, she continued, warming to her subject. Identify undesirable residents, document violations, escalate enforcement until relocation becomes inevitable. Standard corporate acquisition technique. Derek was sweating through his shirt now. Dolores, please. No, Derek. I want him to understand this wasn't personal. It was business. Smart business. I leaned against my workbench, letting the recording equipment capture every word of her confession. So the false police reports were part of the business plan? Strategic enforcement escalation, she corrected with professional pride. When HOA violations prove insufficient, municipal code enforcement becomes necessary. When that fails, law enforcement intervention becomes the final option. You mean lying to police about criminal activity? Her eyes flashed with righteous anger. I mean protecting community investments from demographic degradation. Do you have any idea what a single motorcycle restoration operation does to surrounding property values? Derek grabbed her arm desperately. Aunt Dolores stopped talking immediately, but she shook him off, completely lost in her need to justify 3 months of harassment. Property values aren't abstract concepts, Nathaniel. They're mathematical calculations based on neighborhood demographics, noise levels, visual aesthetics, and resident behavioral patterns. Your garage workshop violated every optimization principle. The taste of impending justice was sweet as fresh chrome polish. What about the other residents you targeted? Case studies in demographic correction, she said with academic precision. The single mother, excessive child noise depressed values in a 30-unit radius. The elderly widower, property maintenance deficiencies created visual blight. The landscaper, commercial vehicle traffic suggested zoning violations. And she was providing federal prosecutors with a complete confession to systematic discrimination. Derek made one last desperate attempt at damage control. Marcus, what my aunt is describing are standard property management practices. Standard practices? Dolores laughed bitterly. Derek, show some backbone. What we accomplished here was revolutionary. Targeted demographic optimization through strategic enforcement escalation. She pulled out her own phone, showing me what looked like a spreadsheet. This documents our success rate. 15 families relocated, average timeline 4 months, average property value improvement post-relocation 67%. We perfected the methodology. Derek looked ready to vomit. Oh my God, Dolores, you kept records? Of course I kept records. This system could be franchised nationwide. HOA demographic optimization as a professional service. We were pioneers. And the garage door was open, autumn air carrying the distant sound of sirens. Not coming for us this time, but for the criminals confessing in my workspace. One more question, I said, adjusting a wrench while recording equipment captured everything. How many other neighborhoods are you running this operation in? Dolores's smile was pure predatory satisfaction. 12 active projects across 3 counties. Projected revenue for next fiscal year, approximately $4.7 million. Derek sat down heavily on my workbench, his head in his hands. You kept records of everything, every neighborhood, every family, every illegal operation. Illegal? Dolores's voice rose to a near shriek. We're optimization specialists. Property value enhancement through strategic resident management. There's nothing illegal about protecting community investments. Through the garage window, I could see Agent Martinez approaching my driveway with backup agents and arrest warrants. Derek saw them too. Dolores, they're coming. We need to run, now. But she was beyond rational thought, lost in her own narcissistic fantasy. Let them come. I have documentation proving every action was legally justified community management. Some people dig their own graves. Others excavate entire cemeteries. Agent Martinez appeared at my garage entrance like the angel of justice herself, flanked by 6 federal agents and 3 local police officers. Derek Weatherby, Dolores Weatherby, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit federal fraud, civil rights violations, and witness tampering. The look on Dolores's face was priceless. Pure shock, mixed with the kind of rage that comes from realizing you've been outsmarted by people you considered inferior. This is entrapment, she screamed, backing toward my workbench. He recorded us illegally. This is a setup. Agent Martinez smiled coldly. Mrs. Weatherby, you're on Mr. Thompson's private property. Recording is completely legal, and you just confessed to a multi-million-dollar criminal conspiracy while attempting to bribe a federal witness. Derek raised his hands in surrender, his lawyer instincts finally kicking in. I want an attorney. I'm not saying another word. But Dolores wasn't finished destroying herself. You don't understand, she yelled at the agents. We were protecting property values. We were preserving community standards. What we did was necessary. Ma'am, Rodriguez said, stepping into the garage with handcuffs ready. What you did was commit federal crimes, multiple federal crimes. The garage filled with neighbors drawn by the commotion. Mrs. Brianna appeared with her camera, documenting everything. Bob, the electrician, brought his whole family. Janet, the teacher, was live streaming on Facebook. 43 people gathered in my driveway and front yard, watching Dolores Weatherby get arrested for the 2nd time in 3 days. This is all his fault! And Dolores pointed at me like I was personally responsible for her criminal choices. He destroyed our neighborhood with his noise and his criminal friends. Chief Rodriguez stepped forward, removing his civilian jacket to reveal his police uniform underneath. "Ma'am, I've been coming to this garage every Saturday for 6 months. Mr. Thompson and his friends have never engaged in criminal activity. You, however, just confessed to systematic fraud and civil rights violations." Dolores's face went white as she finally recognized Rodriguez from their previous encounters. You were working together the whole time?" "No, ma'am. I was just helping my friend restore motorcycles. You decided to commit crimes." Agent Martinez began reading rights while neighbors recorded everything on their phones. The scene was already going viral on social media. #HO Karma Justice trending within minutes. "Dolores Weatherby, you have the right to remain silent, though you've waived that right spectacularly for the past 30 minutes. As federal agents led her away in handcuffs, Dolores made one final desperate attempt at manipulation. "This neighborhood will be overrun with criminals and degenerates. Property values will collapse. You'll all regret this." Mrs. Brianna stepped forward, her elderly voice carrying surprising authority. "Mrs. Weatherby, the only criminal in this neighborhood was you. We're better off without bullies who target working families." The crowd erupted in applause. Derek walked quietly to the federal transport vehicle, head down, apparently understanding his situation better than his aunt. But Dolores fought the handcuffs, screaming about miscarriages of justice and corrupt federal prosecutors. Agent Martinez addressed the gathered crowd with professional satisfaction. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you witnessed today was the conclusion of a 6-month federal investigation into HOA fraud and civil rights violations. Mrs. Weatherby and her nephew operated criminal enterprises across 12 residential communities." She held up the evidence folder thick as a phone book. Their organization systematically targeted working-class families, minorities, and elderly residents for harassment designed to force below-market property sales. Total theft exceeded $2 million. The crowd's anger was palpable. Several people shouted about their own experiences with Dolores's harassment. All fraudulent HOA fines are immediately voided. Affected residents will receive compensation through federal victim assistance programs. And this community will receive court-appointed management until new elections can be held. As the federal vehicles drove away with their prisoners, something beautiful happened. The neighborhood spontaneously erupted into celebration. Bob fired up his grill. Mrs. Brianna brought out folding tables. Janet organized a potluck using everyone's cell phones. Within an hour, my driveway hosted the block party Willowbrook Estates had needed for years. Rodriguez stood beside me, watching kids play while adults shared stories about their experiences with Dolores's reign of terror. "Marcus, you realize what you accomplished here. You didn't just save your garage workshop, you liberated an entire community from a criminal organization." The smell of burgers mixing with motor oil and autumn air was perfect. The sound of laughter where harassment used to live was music. "Chief, I just wanted to restore motorcycles in peace. And now you can, along with everyone else who wants to pursue happiness in their own homes." As the sun set over Willowbrook Estates, I realized something profound. Sometimes standing up to bullies doesn't just save yourself. Sometimes it saves everyone. The chrome on my Harley reflected 43 smiling faces, and for the first time in months, Saturday felt like it was supposed to. 6 months later, Willowbrook Estates looked like a completely different neighborhood. The community center buzzed with activity every Saturday morning as the Willowbrook Veterans Workshop taught motorcycle restoration, woodworking, and basic automotive repair to anyone who wanted to learn. What started as my garage hobby had become a neighborhood institution. Chief Rodriguez stood beside me, watching 12-year-old Tommy Brianna learn to change motorcycle oil under his grandfather's supervision. The smell of motor oil mixed with fresh coffee and genuine laughter, sounds that had been missing during Dolores's reign of terror. "Federal sentencing came through yesterday," Rodriguez said, handing me the court documents. "Dolores got 8 years federal prison. Derek got 5. The investment partners are looking at 10 to 15 each." Justice served with a side of cosmic karma. The financial settlements had transformed the community in ways nobody expected. My portion of the federal restitution, $75,000 from the civil rights violations, $40,000 from the fraud recovery, plus $35,000 from the civil harassment lawsuit, went directly into establishing the workshop program. "Marcus," Mrs. Brianna approached with a plate of her famous cookies. The city council approved our proposal. The community center expansion breaks ground next month. The expansion would include a proper automotive bay, woodworking studio, and computer lab for veterans transitioning to civilian careers. What Dolores had tried to destroy through harassment, the neighborhood was rebuilding through cooperation. Janet, now serving as interim HOA president, joined us with exciting news. The state legislature passed the Willowbrook Act last week. All HOAs in Virginia now require transparent financial reporting and independent oversight. No more management companies owned by board members' relatives. Our little neighborhood drama had sparked statewide HOA reform legislation. Sometimes standing up to corruption creates ripples that spread far beyond your own backyard. But the personal transformation felt even more significant. Janet and I had been dating for 3 months now. She brought teaching skills to the workshop program while I provided the technical expertise. Together, we were helping veterans and young people learn trades that could change their lives. "You know what the best part is?" she said, watching elderly Mr. Peterson teach his grandson to restore a vintage radio. We turned Dolores's worst nightmare into reality. She was right. The neighborhood was more diverse, more active, and more connected than ever. Working-class families, retirees, young professionals, and military veterans all learning from each other in the space where Dolores had tried to enforce artificial segregation. The workshop had helped 17 veterans find employment in the past 6 months. Rodriguez coordinated with the police department to provide security training for those interested in law enforcement careers. Local contractors hired graduates for apprenticeship programs. "Speaking of nightmares," Rodriguez grinned, "guess who's been writing letters from federal prison?" Dolores had been sending complaints to the warden about inadequate legal representation and wrongful conviction by corrupt federal prosecutors. Apparently, federal prison hadn't diminished her sense of entitlement. She also wrote to the mayor demanding investigation into our conspiracy to frame innocent community volunteers. Rodriguez continued. The mayor forwarded it to me with a note. "Please thank Mr. Thompson for helping clean up municipal corruption." Even from prison, Dolores couldn't accept responsibility for her choices. The autumn air carried sounds of construction as workers expanded the community center workshop space. The same season when Dolores had tried to destroy my garage was now witnessing its transformation into something that served the entire community. "You know what I learned from all this?" I said, adjusting the carburetor on a motorcycle donated for the youth training program. "Bullies only win when good people stay silent." Mrs. Brianna nodded wisely. "And sometimes fighting back helps more people than you ever imagined." The YouTube video documenting our story had reached 2.3 million views, inspiring similar community workshops across the country. Veterans in Phoenix, Detroit, and Jacksonville were starting their own programs based on the Willowbrook model. As sunset painted the sky orange and purple, families began gathering for our weekly community barbecue. The same driveway where Dolores had called 911 now hosted celebrations that brought neighbors together instead of driving them apart. Rodriguez fired up the grill while kids played safely in yards their parents no longer feared to enjoy. "Hey, Nathaniel," Tommy Brianna called out. "Can you teach me to restore a Harley next Saturday?" "Absolutely, buddy. Bring your safety glasses." The chrome on 3 restored motorcycles reflected a community that had learned something valuable. When you stand up to corruption, everybody wins. Except the criminals. They get 8 years in federal prison.
So Nathaniel gets out of the Navy after 8 years, buys a nice house in a nice neighborhood, figures he can work on motorcycles in his garage on weekends. Sounds simple, right? But his HOI president decides that a $300 violation for using his own garage. What gets me in these situations is that people expect they count on you to get emotional, to get flustered, and just pay the fine to make it go away. But Marcus didn't do that. He read the bylaws, all of them. He kept records. So when Dolores called the emergency meeting thinking she had all the votes, turns out she never actually checked in with the other board members. It's funny how the rules they use against you can work for you too, if you spend the time to actually understand them. How many of you have been through something similar? Someone with a little authority decides to make your life difficult for no reason at all. And if this one hits home, don't hesitate to click that like button and maybe send it to someone who also needs to see it. Sometimes the quiet victories are the best ones. Thanks for watching.